I still remember the first time I saw Vanessa. There was a power outage at her marketing firm in downtown Portland, and my electrical contracting business got the emergency call. I arrived to find her standing in the lobby, illuminated by emergency lights, somehow looking both perfectly put together and completely stressed out. "You have no idea how much we need you right now," she said. It's strange how those words would echo differently in my mind years later. At the time, though, I just smiled, introduced myself as Marcus Reeves, owner of Cascade Electrical, and promised to have everything running again soon. While I worked to restore power to the building, she stayed with me, asking intelligent questions about what I was doing. Most clients just wanted the problem fixed, but Vanessa seemed genuinely interested in understanding the process. By the time I finished, the sunset was bleeding through the windows, and instead of just signing off on the work, she asked if I'd like to grab dinner. I remember thinking that some connections just feel like completing a circuit, immediate, powerful, and undeniable. That's how it was with us. Despite our different worlds, her sleek marketing office and my work van, conversation flowed effortlessly over Thai food as night fell over the Willamette River. She told me about her 6-year-old daughter, Haley, and how they were rebuilding their lives after her divorce 2 years prior. I told her about growing up in a family of electricians, learning the trade from my father, who taught me that bringing light to dark places was more than just a job. It was a way of making the world better, one connection at a time. 3 months later, I met Haley, this bright-eyed little girl with her mother's analytical mind and an unexpected fascination with how things worked. I remember her bombardment of why questions that first day at the park. Why do swings go back and forth? Why does static make your hair stand up? I'd never thought much about having children, but something clicked when I knelt down to her level and explained conductivity, using the metal slide and the static from her plastic jacket. The way her eyes lit up when she understood, that was a kind of power I'd never experienced before. For her 7th birthday, I built her a dollhouse with real working lights in every room, complete with tiny switches she could flip. I'll never forget how she hugged me, calling me Marcus the Magician, before asking if I could teach her to make light too. That became our thing. Sunday afternoons in my workshop, with Haley perched safely on a stool, learning how to connect simple circuits. "Careful connections make things work," I'd tell her. "Rushing leads to shorts." Little did I know how prophetic those casual workshop lessons would become. Vanessa and I married when Haley was 8, and I moved into their small apartment. We started saving for a house immediately, something with character that I could restore with my own hands. A year later, we found it. A 1920s craftsman with beautiful bones but outdated everything, including dangerous knob and tube wiring that needed complete replacement. Most people would have been intimidated, but I saw beyond the frayed wires and decaying fixtures. I saw potential, just waiting for the right hands to bring it back to life. Over the next 5 years, I transformed that house while building my business during the day. Nights and weekends were devoted to careful restoration, replacing every inch of wiring, designing custom lighting for each room. For Haley's bedroom, I created constellations of tiny LED lights that mapped the night sky on her ceiling. For our bedroom, I installed vintage wall sconces I'd restored myself, giving the space a warm amber glow that made Vanessa's skin look like honey. For Vanessa's home office, I built a chandelier from copper pipe and Edison bulbs that became a conversation piece during her work meetings. Every socket, every switch, every fixture in that house passed through my hands. The 3 of us were happy there, or at least I thought we were. Haley grew from a curious child into a teenager who still spent time in my workshop, eventually helping me with smaller jobs at my business during summer breaks. I attended every science fair, every soccer game, every school play. When she decided to apply for the electrical engineering program at Oregon State, I couldn't have been prouder. "You're building on what I taught you," I told her, "but you'll go much further." The last truly happy memory I have was our 12th anniversary. I designed a special pendant light for Vanessa, a delicate thing made of copper wire and hand-blown glass that cast fractal patterns on the walls when lit. We had dinner at home, with Haley helping me cook. Vanessa opened the gift and actually had tears in her eyes. "You make everything more beautiful, Marcus," she said. I believe she meant it then, but things were already changing, though I was too blind to see it. Looking back, I can pinpoint when the first cracks appeared. Vanessa had received a major promotion at her firm, making her the youngest female executive in the company's history. The celebration dinner was at one of those places where they don't put prices on the menu, and everyone wore clothes that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I wore my best suit, the only suit I owned, and tried to look like I belonged. When the CEO asked what I did, Vanessa jumped in before I could answer. "Marcus owns his own business," she said, quickly turning the conversation elsewhere before I could elaborate. In the car ride home, I mentioned it. "You seemed uncomfortable when they asked about my work," she sighed, keeping her eyes on the road. "Some people just don't understand the value of trade work, Marcus." I was trying to avoid awkward conversations. By avoiding saying I'm an electrician? "It's not like that," she said, but her tone suggested otherwise. A few weeks later, I overheard Haley on the phone with a friend, talking about college applications. "Mom says I should maybe consider business school instead." Yeah, I know electrical engineering was my thing, but honestly, the job prospects are better in marketing or business. Something shifted in my chest, hearing that, a disconnection I couldn't quite identify. When Haley's high school graduation came around, I spent weeks crafting her gift. A custom desk lamp with an integrated charging station for her college dorm, featuring the Oregon State logo in copper wire under the shade. I wrapped it carefully and placed it on the gift table at her graduation party. Later that night, I found it in her room, still wrapped, pushed behind some other gifts. When I asked about it, she seemed flustered. "Oh, I just haven't had time to open everything yet, Marcus. Thanks, though." She hugged me quickly and ran off to her friends. The lamp stayed wrapped through the summer. When she left for college, it stayed behind, tucked in her closet. I remember standing in her empty room, holding that unopened gift, and feeling a distance growing between us that I didn't know how to bridge. Then came the day I discovered my workshop tools had been rearranged. I kept my tools in meticulous order, a habit born from both safety concerns and efficiency. But that Saturday morning, everything was slightly off. Drawers were organized differently. Power tools were arranged for display rather than use. It took me a moment to realize what had happened, and when I did, my stomach dropped. I found Vanessa in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. "Someone's been reorganizing my workshop," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. She barely looked up. "Oh, the home stager came yesterday while you were on that job in Beaverton. She just tidied up a bit." "Home stager?" The words didn't compute at first. "For what?" "Just to get some professional photos. For insurance purposes." But I knew that tone. The one that skimmed over the edges of truth. Later that day, while she was out, I checked her laptop. There they were, a folder of professional photos of our home, labeled listing prep. She was planning to sell our house, the house I'd poured my soul into for years without even discussing it with me. That night, when she returned, I confronted her. "Were you planning to tell me you're putting our house on the market? Or was I supposed to find out from a for sale sign on the lawn?" Her face did something complex. Surprise, then guilt, then a kind of resignation. "I was waiting for the right time," she said finally. "We need to talk, Marcus." Those 5 words, the death knell of relationships everywhere. I think we need some time apart. I've been feeling stuck, like we're moving in different directions. "Different directions?" I repeated, feeling like I'd missed some crucial conversation. "We've been building our life together for 13 years. What different directions?" She looked away, straightening items on the counter that didn't need straightening. "My career is taking off. I'm meeting new people, experiencing new things. And you're content to stay the same." The word content sounded like an accusation. "I built a successful business," I said, hearing the defensiveness in my voice. "I restored this entire house I helped raise Haley." "And those are all good things," she said, in that placating tone she used with difficult clients. "But don't you want more? Don't you have bigger ambitions?" I stood in the kitchen where I'd installed the lighting, updated the wiring, mounted the fixtures, and realized she was looking at me like I was one more outdated element that needed upgrading. A week later, I found the Christmas card she'd ordered. "Season's greetings from Vanessa and Haley Reeves." My name, erased, as if 13 years could be so easily deleted. When she suggested I move into the apartment above my shop, quote, temporarily while we figure things out, I agreed. I told myself it was giving her space. But deep down, I knew. Marriages don't take breaks, they break. I took only what I needed: clothes, tools, a few books. Left behind everything I'd built, everything I'd fixed, everything I'd made beautiful. The divorce was quick and clinical. She kept the house. I kept my business. Haley, now in her first year of college, withdrew from both of us during the process, focused on her studies and new college life. At least, that's what I told myself. The truth was more painful. She was choosing sides by not choosing at all. I tried to maintain our Sunday calls, but they grew shorter, more perfunctory. How's school? I'd ask. Fine. Still enjoying your classes? They're okay. Need anything? No, I'm good. Then came my 45th birthday. Vanessa texted, inviting me to stop by the old house for cake. Haley will be home from college. It would mean a lot to her. I should have known better. But hope makes fools of us all. I stopped by my favorite bakery, bought a selection of pastries I knew Haley loved, and headed to the house that still felt like home in my dreams. The front door was different, sleeker with a smart lock instead of the antique hardware I'd restored. I rang the bell, a new electronic chime instead of the mechanical one I'd maintained, and waited, gifts in hand, heart hammering stupidly with anticipation. Vanessa opened the door, looking more polished than I remembered, as if the additional absence of me had somehow enhanced her. "Marcus," she said, offering a cheek kiss that landed mostly on air. "Come in. There's someone I want you to meet." That should have been my warning. Inside, the house was different. The warm colors we'd chosen together had been replaced with cool grays and whites. The light fixtures I'd installed, gone. Even the exposed wooden beams I'd painstakingly restored were painted over in stark white. Standing in my former living room was a tall, silver-haired man in a casual button-down that probably cost more than all the clothes I was wearing. "Marcus, this is Jackson Whitmore," Vanessa said, her hand on his arm with casual possession. "My fiancé." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Fiancé? We'd been divorced less than a year. "Congratulations," I managed, the word tasting like metal in my mouth. Jackson extended his hand with the confident grip of someone who's never questioned his place in a room. "The electrician, right? Vanessa's told me all about you." The electrician, not her ex-husband, not Haley's stepfather for 13 years. The electrician. I heard Haley's voice before I saw her, coming down the stairs talking to someone on her phone. "Be back at campus tomorrow." "Yeah, Mom's boyfriend is taking us shopping after this birthday thing for Mom's ex who fixes the electricity." She stopped when she saw me, a flash of something. Guilt. Embarrassment. Crossing her face before she composed herself. "Oh, hi, Marcus. Happy birthday." Mom's ex who fixes the electricity. 13 years of bedtime stories, science projects, driving lessons, and college application essays reduced to a function. I stood there, pastry box growing damp in my sweating hands, as Jackson casually draped his arm around Vanessa's shoulders. "Marcus, I was just telling Vanessa about my plans for renovating. Since I'll be moving in after the wedding, we want to make some modernizing changes. I was thinking you might give us a quote for updating the electrical. New smart home system, integrated automation, the works." The casual way he claimed ownership of the house I'd restored inch by inch made something in me go very still and cold. "I'm sure once it's all done, you won't even recognize the place," he continued. "Consider yourself the temporary man of the house until I officially take over." He laughed, as if he'd said something charming instead of driving a stake through my chest. Temporary. 13 years. Temporary. Haley set down her phone, finally noticing the pastry box in my hands. "Are those from Delphine's?" she asked, some genuine emotion finally breaking through. "The raspberry ones I like?" I nodded, mute, and set the box on the coffee table. A new one, not the reclaimed wood piece I'd refinished myself. "I should go," I said, finding my voice at last. "Early job tomorrow." "But we haven't had cake," Vanessa said, frowning slightly. As if cake could make this tolerable. As if frosting could cover the bitter taste of being erased. "I'm sure you three have plans," I said. "Thanks for the invite." I turned to leave, then stopped, remembering something. "Haley, there's still that desk lamp I made for your graduation in your closet. You might want to take it back to your dorm." Her face flushed. "Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me." I could almost hear the lamp being mentally consigned to a donation box the minute I left. At the door, it was Jackson who caught up with me, all bonhomie and confidence. No hard feelings about the renovation plans, right? Progress marches on and all that. But seriously, we'd love to have you do the electrical. Keep it in the family, so to speak. I looked at him, this stranger who would sleep in my bedroom, cook in my kitchen, live with my family. I'll email you a quote, I said, and left without looking back. The only thing I took from that visit was a framed photo I noticed, sitting forgotten on a side table. A picture of me teaching 10-year-old Haley how to use a multimeter. I slipped it into my pocket as I left. I doubt they even noticed it was gone. The apartment above my shop felt especially empty that night. I sat in the dark, that photograph in my hands, wondering how 13 years could vanish so completely. How I could go from being the foundation of a family to being, what? A service provider? An awkward footnote? A temporary placeholder? I didn't sleep. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, counting the hours by the changing patterns of light filtering through my blinds, feeling something hardening inside me where hurt had been. If I was nothing to them, then they would become nothing to me. At least, that's what I told myself in the darkest part of that night. My friend Leo found me the next morning, still sitting in that chair, the photograph clutched in my hand. He'd come by to drop off some parts for a joint project, using his key when I didn't answer his calls. Jesus, Marcus, he said, taking in my rumpled clothes and hollow eyes. What happened? I told him. All of it. The birthday, Jackson, Haley's dismissal, the temporary man comment. Leo listened, making coffee as I talked, occasionally swearing softly under his breath. When I finished, he pushed a mug into my hands. Drink this, then shower. Then we're going to breakfast, and you're going to eat something while I tell you what I know about Jackson Whitmore. At the diner, Leo pulled out his phone and showed me what an hour of internet searching had revealed. Jackson Whitmore, self-proclaimed tech entrepreneur and investment wizard. Founder of 3 failed startups, each one leaving investors holding the bag while he walked away unscathed. Currently CEO of something called Future Flow Innovations, a company with a slick website full of buzzwords and vague promises about revolutionizing digital payment processing. This guy's a fraud, Marcus, Leo said, scrolling through articles about investor lawsuits that had been quietly settled. He talks a good game, but he leaves scorched earth behind him. I stared at the screen, seeing Jackson's confident smile in photo after photo, always with different partners, different backers. Does Vanessa know? Leo shrugged. Hard to say. She's smart, but smart people get conned all the time, especially when the con tells them what they want to hear. I thought about Vanessa's hunger for status, for moving up in the world. About how I'd never been enough. She might not care as long as he keeps up appearances, I said finally. Leo put his phone away and leaned forward. So what are you going to do? I had no answer then. But a week later, I got a call that would change everything. It was Vanessa, her voice cool and professional. Marcus, we've got an electrical emergency at the house. The kitchen lost power, and the new refrigerator is off. Jackson tried resetting the breakers, but it didn't help. I shouldn't have gone. Should have referred her to another electrician. But some habits die hard, and despite everything, I still cared about that house. My house being safe. I arrived to find Vanessa alone, Jackson apparently at a, quote, crucial investor meeting. It took me less than 5 minutes to identify the problem, an overloaded circuit from too many new high-powered appliances. As I worked in the electrical panel, Vanessa hovered nearby, making stilted conversation. Jackson's company is taking off, she said. He's meeting with major venture capital firms this week. We're thinking of buying a vacation home in Bend once the first round of funding closes. I made non-committal noises, focusing on the wiring. Haley's thinking of switching her major, she continued. Jackson thinks business administration would be a better fit than engineering. He's offered her an internship at FutureFlow for the summer. That made me look up. She's dropping electrical engineering? Vanessa waved a hand dismissively. She was only interested in that because of you, Marcus. It was never really her passion. Each word was another small death. Not only was I being erased from their present, but now from the influence I'd had on their past as well. I finished the repair in silence, then wrote up the invoice. As I was packing up my tools, I noticed something odd. The built-in bookshelf I'd constructed in the living room had been moved away from the wall. Behind it was an access panel to some wiring I'd installed years ago for their entertainment system. "Are you having work done on the living room wiring?" I asked. Vanessa looked confused. "No. Why?" "The bookshelf's been moved. Someone accessed that panel recently." She frowned. "Jackson was looking for a place to run some cables for his home office setup. He might have been exploring options." I nodded and finished packing up. But something felt off. That access panel wasn't marked on any house plans. Only I knew it was there. As I was leaving, Vanessa suddenly asked, "The wiring in this house, it's all up to code, right? Safe?" "Of course," I said, surprised. "I did all the work myself. You know that." She nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. "Jackson mentioned something about insurance requirements and older homes. Just checking." After I left, I sat in my van for a long time, thinking about that access panel, about Jackson exploring the bones of my house, about Vanessa's odd question. Something wasn't adding up. Have you ever had that moment when suspicion crystallizes into certainty? When scattered pieces suddenly form a clear picture? If you've ever been underestimated or pushed aside, you know that particular clarity that comes with finally seeing a path forward. A week later, I was called back to the house for another electrical issue. This time, no one was home, but Vanessa had given me the new door code and asked me to check the upstairs outlets that weren't working. It didn't take long to fix, just a tripped GFCI outlet in the bathroom that needed resetting. But before I left, I went to that access panel behind the bookshelf. My original reason for creating it had been to run entertainment system wiring, but it also happened to connect to a small void in the wall, a quirk of old house architecture that had created a perfect hidden compartment. I'd never had reason to use it, but I'd always known it was there. Inside, I found a waterproof document case that hadn't been there when I built the compartment. And inside that case, a treasure trove of information that made my blood run cold. Financial documents, investor agreements, email printouts, all related to Jackson's company, and all suggesting a sophisticated fraud operation. Fake projections, shell companies, diverted investments. Even more shocking, some of the documents had Vanessa's signature. She wasn't just marrying a con man, she was becoming his accomplice. I carefully photographed everything with my phone, put everything back exactly as I'd found it, and left the house with my heart pounding. That night, I showed the evidence to Leo. "This is federal-level fraud," he whispered, scrolling through the photos. "They're soliciting investments for technology that doesn't exist." "And Vanessa's involved," I said, the words still bitter on my tongue. Leo looked at me with a mixture of pity and concern. "What are you going to do? What would you do if you discovered the people who'd discarded you were building their new life on quicksand? Would you warn them? Would you walk away? Would you expose them?" I spent weeks wrestling with those questions. In that time, I never breathed a word about what I'd found. Instead, I watched. I researched. I built a case, methodically gathering information about Jackson's businesses, his previous ventures, his patterns. I learned that federal investigators were already looking into his previous company, but hadn't yet connected it to future flow. I discovered that he and Vanessa had been seeing each other for months before our separation, their relationship predating our marital break. I found out that Haley had indeed changed her major and was now telling people she was going into tech finance with her stepdad's company. I learned that my replacement was not only a fraud in business, but had constructed an entirely false persona. From his claimed Harvard MBA, he'd attended 2 semesters before dropping out, to his family money. His parents were retired teachers in Arizona. During this time, I also bought a warehouse space near the Columbia River, telling myself and others it was for expanding my business. In truth, I wasn't sure why I did it, only that I needed to build something new, something entirely my own. Working on that space became my therapy. Every evening after jobs, I'd go there and work until exhaustion forced me home. New wiring, new lighting, new purpose. 3 months after discovering the documents, I received a text from Vanessa. "Jackson and I are hosting a dinner for some business associates tomorrow night at Timber and Grain. The restaurant's having electrical issues with their private dining room lighting. I told them you'd stop by tomorrow afternoon to fix it. They'll pay your regular rate plus rush fees. I almost laughed at the presumption, but something about the timing felt right. I agreed. The next day I went to Timber and Grain, fixed their minor wiring issue, and had a long conversation with the manager about the private dining event scheduled for that evening. When I left the restaurant, I made another stop at the local field office of the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, where I'd arranged a meeting with Special Agent Diana Chen. 2 hours later, I returned to my apartment, showered, and put on the one good suit I owned. That night, I arrived at Timber and Grain 15 minutes after Vanessa's dinner party had been seated in the private dining room. The restaurant manager, as arranged, led me directly there without announcement. I walked into a room of 8 people mid-meal, Jackson and Vanessa at the heads of the table, Haley beside her mother, and 5 well-dressed individuals who had to be the potential investors. Their conversation stopped abruptly when I entered. "Marcus?" Vanessa looked confused. "Is there a problem with the lighting?" I smiled, feeling strangely calm. "No, the lighting is working perfectly. Everything is illuminated exactly as it should be." Jackson recovered quickly, all charm. "Marcus, good to see you, but we're in the middle of a business dinner. Perhaps we can catch up another time?" I pulled out an empty chair and sat down. "Actually, I think your guests might be interested in what I have to say, particularly about FutureFlow's actual technological capabilities." The room went very still. One of the investors, a gray-haired woman in an impeccable suit, raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Marcus Reeves. I'm an electrical contractor and Vanessa's ex-husband. I'm also someone who understands the difference between functional technology and empty promises." Jackson's smile became fixed. "Marcus has been going through a difficult time since our divorce," Vanessa said smoothly. "Perhaps this isn't the best." "I've brought some documents I think you should see," I continued, pulling out my phone and a small portable projector I used for client presentations, "including proof that the proprietary payment processing algorithm Jackson has been promising doesn't actually exist." The investor's eyebrow climbed higher. "That's a serious allegation." "It is," came a voice from the doorway. Diana Chen stepped into the room, badge already in hand. "M1, the Internal Revenue Service, is very interested in discussing further." What followed was controlled chaos. Diana introducing herself as an IRS criminal investigator who'd been tracking Jackson's activities. Me projecting document after document on the dining room wall. Proof of diverted investor funds, fabricated technical specifications, falsified credentials. Jackson's increasingly desperate attempts to control the narrative, culminating in him trying to flee the restaurant only to find 2 more agents waiting in the lobby. Vanessa's face, draining of color as she realized her fiancé wasn't just being accused. He was genuinely guilty of everything I was saying. And Haley, my Haley, looking between her mother and me with dawning horror as her new future crumbled before her eyes. I didn't stay for the aftermath. Once Diana took control of the situation, I packed up my projector and left quietly. My part was done. The federal investigation moved quickly. Jackson was charged with multiple counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and tax evasion. Vanessa, to my surprise, was not charged. Apparently, her involvement, while ethically questionable, fell short of criminal liability. But her professional reputation was in tatters. Within weeks, she was asked to resign from her executive position. The house, my house, went on the market to pay legal fees. For a while, I heard nothing from either of them. Then, 2 months after that dinner, Vanessa called. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice lacking its usual polish. "About the house mortgage." We met at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. She looked thinner, tired, the glossy veneer worn away. "The bank says your name is still on the mortgage," she said without preamble, "even though the divorce decree gave me the house." "That's right," I confirmed. "The lawyer advised me not to remove my name until the house was refinanced in your name only, which you never did." She stared into her untouched coffee. "I can't make the payments anymore. Not without my job. Not with Jackson's assets frozen and the legal fees." "And you want me to do what, exactly?" "Help," she said simply. "Either take over the payments or co-sign a refinance at a lower rate. For Haley's sake, if not for mine." I studied her face. This woman I'd once loved enough to build a life around. "Where is Haley now?" Back at school, she changed her major again. Back to engineering. A small, sad laugh. She said, "At least electricity doesn't lie." For a long moment, I said nothing, just letting the weight of our shared history and separate choices hang between us. "I won't take on the mortgage," I finally said, "and I won't co-sign a refinance." She closed her eyes briefly, shoulders slumping. "But," I continued, "I will buy the house at fair market value, which will let you pay off the mortgage and have something to start over with." Her eyes flew open. "You'd do that? After everything?" I shrugged. "The house was always more mine than yours anyway, but there's a condition." "What?" "I need you to be honest with Haley. About everything. About when you and Jackson really started. About what you knew regarding his businesses. About why you really wanted to leave me." She flinched but nodded slowly. "Some lessons have to be learned the hard way, Vanessa. Believe me, I know." A month later, I had my house back. I didn't move in right away. Instead, I focused on the warehouse by the river, which was taking shape as something unexpected. Not just an expansion of my electrical business, but a training center. A place where I could teach people the skills I'd learned from my father. Real work. Honest work. Work that kept the lights on and the world running. I was installing the main lighting grid when I heard the door open. I turned to see Haley standing there, looking tentative, and so much younger than her 19 years. "Mom told me I might find you here," she said. "Can I come in?" I nodded, setting down my tools as she wandered through the half-finished space, stopping to examine the workbenches I'd built, the training stations beginning to take shape. "What is this place?" she asked finally. "A new beginning," I said. "I'm converting part of my business into a trade school of sorts, for kids who don't have direction but have good hands and minds. Teaching them electrical work, basic construction, the foundations of solar installation." She made a slow circle, taking it all in. "Like you tried to teach me." "Yes?" She stopped at a blueprint pinned to the wall. "My design for the finished space. Mom told me everything," she said quietly. "About her and Jackson. About what she did. About what you did." I waited, giving her the space to find her words. Sometimes our greatest strengths are overlooked by those closest to us. Have you ever had someone finally see your true value after dismissing you? For me, that moment came when Haley turned to face me, eyes brimming with tears and understanding. "I'm so sorry, Marcus," she whispered. "I let myself believe what was easier to believe. That you weren't enough, that your work wasn't important, that someone like Jackson was worth more just because he talked bigger and spent more." She gestured around the warehouse. "But this, what you build, what you know, what you can teach, this is real. This matters." I felt something long clenched inside me begin to loosen. "Would you like to help?" I asked, nodding toward the lighting installation. "I could use an assistant who remembers the difference between series and parallel circuits." Her smile was watery but genuine. "You think I still remember anything after all that business school nonsense?" "I think," I said carefully, "that some knowledge goes deeper than we realize. The foundations we build stay with us, even when we try to cover them up." She picked up a pair of wire strippers from my toolbox, the same ones I'd first taught her to use when she was 10. "Show me what to do?" And so I did. For the next several months, Haley came to the warehouse whenever she wasn't in class, helping me build what was becoming the Columbia River Workshop, a place for second chances and real skills. She re-enrolled in electrical engineering, this time with genuine passion rather than just following my footsteps. We didn't talk much about Vanessa or Jackson or the past. Instead, we focused on circuits and connections, on building something that would last. The day we turned on the main lighting system for the first time, flooding the warehouse with carefully designed light, Haley hugged me tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she whispered, "even when I gave up on you." A year after the restaurant confrontation, the Columbia River Workshop officially opened its doors. Our first class included 10 students, high school dropouts, former addicts, veterans struggling with civilian life, all seeking direction and practical skills. At the small opening ceremony, I was surprised to see Vanessa slip in at the back. She looked different, Simpler clothes, less makeup, somehow more like the woman I'd met years ago in that power outage. She didn't stay long, just watched from a distance as Haley and I guided our new students through the space, explaining the programs, answering questions. As she was leaving, I caught up with her at the door. "Thank you for coming," I said. She gave me a small, sad smile. "I wanted to see what you've built." "It's impressive, Marcus." "How are you doing?" I asked, finding that I genuinely wanted to know. "I'm okay. Working at a smaller firm now. Less status, more stability." She hesitated. "I've been thinking a lot about value lately, about what really matters." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I made a mistake," she said simply. "Many mistakes, I'm sorry." "I know," I replied. And I did. 6 months later, I received a Community Impact Award for the workshop's success in placing graduates in skilled jobs across the Pacific Northwest. At the ceremony, it was Haley who introduced me, standing tall and confident at the podium. "Many of you know Marcus Reeves as an electrical contractor," she began. "Some of you know him as the founder of Columbia River Workshop. But I know him as my father, not by blood, but by choice and by action, who taught me that true value isn't in what you appear to be, but in what you build that lasts." As I accepted the award, looking out at the audience filled with students, colleagues, and friends, I thought about foundations, about how the most important ones are often invisible, hidden beneath flashier structures, about how what seems temporary can prove to be the most permanent thing of all. I thought about the circuits that connect us, how they can be broken and repaired, how they can grow stronger at the places they've been damaged, how the right connections can bring light to the darkest places. And I realized that in losing what I thought was my family, I'd found something larger: purpose, community, and a chance to build foundations that would support others long after I was gone. None of us are temporary. The light we bring to others' lives continues to shine in ways we may never fully see. Sometimes it takes being treated as disposable to discover just how essential you truly are. If that's your story too, know that you're not alone. The house by the river is mine again now. I've restored it once more, keeping what was worth saving, improving what needed upgrading. Haley visits often, sometimes bringing friends from her engineering program to see the electrical systems I've designed. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about what was lost. The family I thought we were, the future I had planned. But then I look at what's been found instead: a true connection with my daughter, work that makes a tangible difference, a life built on honest foundations. And I know that while some circuits get broken beyond repair, others can be rebuilt stronger than before. The temporary man of the house turned out to be the most permanent thing of all.